Hello, welcome to Salt and Light Canning. I'm Jessica. This is my kitchen. I'm happy that you're here. I am so excited today. I am canning green beans out of my garden. It's amazing to me to have enough green beans to actually justify canning them this year. So exciting. Last year I got to can like 2 jars, but because they were pole beans and I planted them along the fence, my dogs really love green beans and they ate them. They ate my green beans. So I only had enough to do a couple of dinners, and it was like 2 jars of green beans. It was nothing. So this year I planted bush beans, and they're in the middle of the garden, and so the dogs can't get to them. So I'm excited to have enough beans to actually can. It's wonderful. All I'm doing right now, I'm just cutting the little stem piece off, and then I'm cutting them like in half so it's easier to bite, you know. So you want to be able to put them on a fork and easily bite them and not make a mess. I brought them in and I rinsed them really well several times in water, and then I just have them in a couple of bowls of water. There's still lots more green beans out on the plants that are maturing and getting ready to be picked, so I am so excited for green beans this year. Green beans are one of my favorite things to can. They were one of the very first things I ever canned. So it's exciting to me to be able to can green beans from my garden. That's just, doesn't get better than that. If you're not growing a garden, think about growing a garden. Maybe see what you can do for next year or for when your garden season starts. Learn to grow something, even if it is just green beans. Learn to grow something just so that you know how. Or maybe just grow some lettuces in the house. We just harvested the lettuces that were in the house, and I'm going to replant. Learn to grow something, do something, just so that you know that if you ever needed to, you could provide for your family with the knowledge that you have and not be reliant on somebody else to provide for your family. And I ate some raw ones. It just reminded me of growing up with my grandma in her garden. I can remember eating beans off the vine. Shake them down. Just pack them in as tight as you can. I end up with some floating because I raw pack, but I'm not going to cook my beans before I put them in the jar and have them get all mushy. So you do you. If you like to hot pack your beans, then hot pack your beans. So wonderful. Just doesn't get better than this. So I'm filling to 1 inch of headspace. I just kind of smush them in there. That is so pretty. Green beans look just beautiful in the jar. This year we grew, I think these are called Roma bush beans. And we grew contender bush beans. And while I think the contenders produce more, the Romas are just beautiful beans. And they both taste just delicious. It doesn't compare. Like buying vegetables at the store doesn't compare to growing your own. Like the flavor is just completely different. So I cannot encourage you enough to grow some of your own food. And I mean, we don't have a lot of space, but God really provides for us with what we have. Anyway, I'm gonna get these all trimmed up and in the jars, and I'll be back when I'm doing something else. All right, I have 12 quarts and 1 pint of beans, which is just awesome. I'm so excited. So now I'm going to put a little salt in my jars. You could put up to a tablespoon. I just do a little less than a teaspoon. You do not have to do salt. This is just kosher salt. You can use canning salt. You could use sea salt. Just don't use iodized salt. I do like a little salt, but you do not have to have any salt. You can do whatever you want. If you like seasoning, you can put seasoning in your beans. It's completely up to you. I'm just doing beans, a little bit of salt and water. Have some filtered water. I'm going to fill my jars with filtered water up to an inch of headspace. Canning is really not difficult. It doesn't have to be difficult. I've seen things with people dry canning vegetables. I don't recommend doing that just because you need the water to conduct your heat through your jar. It is not an approved method. There are things that I do that are not approved, but I would never dry can my vegetables. All right, I'm gonna have to get a little bit more water. All right, and debubble as best you can, because since I raw pack those vegetables, they may not want to debubble very well. So just do the best you can. Now, yes, with raw packing, I do anticipate having floating vegetables. Doesn't bother me. If it bothers you, then by all means, hot pack your vegetables. In general, with the exception to potatoes, which I blanch, I raw pack my vegetables. There we go. Now, I'm going to take some paper towel and a little white vinegar, and I'm going to wipe the rims of my jars. Probably don't need to, but I always do, just because it helps me always have a routine. In canning, it really is just about doing the right thing over and over and over and over and over again. And the right thing is making sure the rims of your jars are clean. Now, let's get some lids on. Put a lid on it, ring on it, just a fingertip tight. And these are so pretty. I love the way green beans look in the jar. If you don't know what fingertip tight is, it just means that just your fingers can turn the lid and you don't engage your wrist. Because when your jars are in the canner, everything gets expanded, the air gets expanded, everything gets expanded. And it needs to be able to vent in order to create a seal when you take it out. So your jar cooling creates that vacuum seal, and then the gasket on the lid sticks to the jar. So don't over tighten your jars. It can cause your lids to buckle, and then they don't want to seal, and then you spend all that time and energy for no good reason. All right, have my beautiful green beans in the canners. The water in the canner is cold because the water in my jars is cold. Everything is cold. You want to match temperatures when you're canning because you don't want to shatter your jars. So I'm going to turn on the stove and put my lids on. I'm going to can the pint in with the quarts. It's only 5 minutes difference. It's not going to hurt anything. Don't stress about it. I'm going to bring these up to temperature. I'm going to let it vent right here for 10 minutes. Then I will put the weight on, and when it comes up to 15 pounds of pressure, because that's what I have to do for my altitude, I'm going to let them process for 25 minutes. Yes, even with my pint in there, I'm going to let it process for 25 minutes. Then I'll be back when I'm taking them out of the canner. Well, I'm not entirely sure what happened, but this is the second time I've had to record the audio for this video. Sometimes things just don't work out. So, anyways, what I was saying is I let the process for 25 minutes, and then I turned off the stove and I just let my pressure canners come off of pressure gradually and slowly, and I didn't touch them and I didn't hurry them and I didn't nothing. I just let everything happen in its own time. Whenever you're pressure canning, you have to let the pressure come off slowly and gradually, otherwise you end up with a lot of siphoning. And once the pressure went completely down and the little pressure button, like the gauge went all the way down and then the little lock went down, I took off the weight and I let the weight stay off for a few minutes. And then I opened the lid and I just kind of propped it to let some of the steam and some of the heat out for a couple of minutes. Then I took the lids off for a couple of minutes. You have to take your time when you're going to take things out of the pressure canner, because again, if you don't, you end up with a bunch of siphoning. And siphoning, I find, happens when you raw pack vegetables or anytime you do anything with tomatoes. And since I raw packed my green beans, I didn't want to lose all of my liquid. But I just love having home canned green beans from my garden on the shelf. It's just amazing. They look beautiful in the jar. And I'm just so excited that I'm able to do this year. It's just wonderful. So blessed. So blessed. Anytime I'm in the kitchen canning, it just reminds me of my time growing up with my grandma. And I'm just so blessed to have had her in my life. Anyways, these are just going to sit on my counter and they will relax and seal and have a good night. And in the morning, I will take the rings off and check the seals and label them and put them in the pantry, and then we'll have them for wonderful meals later. But anyways, check out my link below for my Amazon storefront. You'll find my pressure canners there, and just don't be afraid to try. Be so blessed. Know that you're loved, and be a blessing to someone else. I'll see you in the next video.